The views and opinions of this program are those of the hosts, guests, and callers. There is substantial risk of loss in trading futures and options, which you should carefully consider prior to trading. Well, there's been a lot of talk on social media about yield estimates, tracking the weather across the Corn Belt, fund selling, algo trading, and so much more. By and large, when you look at the crops, weather's been relatively ideal. We still got a long ways to go. Monday market action, the corn market did hold a little bit of green while the rest of the grains were under pressure. Meantime, really tough start to the week in the cattle complex. We're going to talk about all that and more here today on Market Talk. Joining us for a conversation, it's good to catch up again with Dwayne Bussey from Bolt Marketing. Dwayne, how are you, buddy? It's good to talk to you again.
Yeah, I'm doing well. Doing the same thing before, coaching baseball and running around. So every night seems like we got a game here or there, but it keeps me busy, but I'm not going to turn it down at all. I really enjoy the heck out of it. And like you said, sometimes these markets kind of suck. So it's good to get out of here.
Well, and to that point, I mean, you asked me this before we went on. I said it's tough every single day to talk about these markets when it's just down, 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 down. It seems like no matter what the news, bullish, bearish, the funds, traders just keep hammering these grain markets. And it's either you stare at that or you stare at all the debate on social media about yields and more. I mean, one of the two, but corn held up okay Monday. It's still, though, it's just, I know market sentiment, farmer sentiment, and more is kind of in the dumps looking at this overall grain trade right now, Dwayne.
Yeah, no, you nailed it all there in a really good summary. You know, speaking of the fund selling, so U.S. report on Friday, right? And report comes out, and I watch. Anyone who's seen a live ticker knows that the market moves before I can even read part of that report or even the headline. So yeah, I saw it turn red right away and thought, bearish report. And then as I looked through it through corn, I'm like, no, that's pretty much a bullish report in my eyes. But the funds have been just hammering this thing. And I think they just wanted to get past 11 o'clock and their program said sell after that, whatever rally we get, because weather's good. They're trading a higher yield than what USDA is giving us. Like you said, that's been out on social media too. So yeah, I'm kind of annoyed. A month ago, 2 months ago, I didn't jump on board with this trade action that the funds are just selling it and just jump on board. They're too powerful, have too many positions, and they've been just driving it down, like you said, for a long time. Now, a great day today in the corn market. Ended up with a key reversal right in the end. I mean, Sunday night opens up, we gap lower, trade lower for a little while. I watch it for about an hour or something like that. And I'm like, yeah, this seems correct. The funds are selling. The weather's good. Yeah, of course, we're going to be lower. I wake up in the morning and I'm almost surprised that corn was green. And then all of a sudden we make a key reversal today. Now, everyone would probably love for me to say, that's the low, forget it, here we go. I'm definitely not putting my foot in that trap. I don't think it's the low yet. I'm afraid crop conditions get a little bit better, and we probably test Sunday night's low eventually this week.
Well, and here's the thing with corn. I mean, this could be the case for soybeans and wheat too, but since we're on the corn topic, there's so much talk about yields and estimates and the weather, and for the most part, weather's been good, but when is enough? When do we finally get some positive momentum? And I have to wonder, starting to hear that chatter of population issues in some areas. I mean, your thoughts on that? I think the silver lining there, Dwayne, is this crop's not made by any stretch of the imagination yet.
Right. No, I'm glad you brought that up. That's the only good thing about this high yield talk. Everyone's talking 184 to 186, and it almost seems like a competition now to who's going to be the first one on social media to say we're going to yield 190. We're going to skip all the 180s and go right to 190. The good thing about hearing all that now is maybe we put a harvest low in, because I think the trade is actually listening to it and trading that, because we sure the heck aren't trading the USDA number I got on Friday, an ending stock of 166. I mean, that is more like 475 to possibly even $5 corn. We're not trading that. We're trading like a 2.1 to 2.2, which would be a 186 yield. So fine, let's get it out of the way, Jesse. Rip the Band-Aid off. Let's have a harvest low in July, assuming that it's that low. And then maybe we start to talk about some problems. I mean, we up here in the Dakotas, we had population problems right from the get-go. It wasn't good on no-till year. We had extreme weather. It was hard, froze the corn off once and started all over again. And then it sounds like you see a few pictures from Illinois that didn't look like it pollinated the best either. Now, that's social media. Those could be pictures from 4 years ago. I don't know. But, I guess I'm trying to summarize by saying maybe we'll make a harvest a little early. Do I think it was today? God, I hope so, but I kind of doubt it.
Well, and to that point, Illinois did catch some good rains over the weekend, but I've seen and heard the reports Indiana's dry. I know we had dry issues in parts of Ohio earlier this spring. You mentioned the Dakotas. And, at the end of the day, as big of a corn crop as Iowa could potentially produce, Iowa's not going to make up for everybody else this year, Dwayne.
I love the way you put that, because I've been the one that's been kind of fighting this yield. My personal yield is at 179. It's been there ever since I knew we were going to increase the acres this much. Because where are you increasing the acres? It's not in Iowa and Illinois. It's in like my home state of South Dakota, which we have a record amount of corn acres planted. And I just got done telling you it's not that great here. So if record yields out of Illinois and Iowa last year couldn't get us above 180, I think it's going to be hard pressed for Iowa to do it by itself this year. Like you said, Ohio is dry, Indiana's dry. Illinois still has very good record potential, but that's very hit and miss too when you talk to producers there. So, but I think, you and I talked before a little bit about, with the good weather we have, you also have to raise the lower end of your yield forecast. I think you and I are both more in that 174 to 175 at worst case, even with pollination issues and that. So not as high as the 186, but it's not a crop disaster either.
And I'll say this, everyone's talking about their yield estimates, and you mentioned yours, and you and I are spot on, and we didn't compare notes before this, but I said off the air, I'm going best case scenario, 179, 180 maybe from everything I'm hearing and gathering. Worst case, you're probably in the low to mid 170s. I don't think it's a massive failure by any stretch of the imagination, but again, there's spots that aren't doing too great here mid-July, but by and large, we can talk yield estimates and all these different things, and the weather's good, etc. But at the end of the day, it's about, what's the market telling us? So you mentioned it. Market doesn't seem like it's trading USDA numbers or anything. So, what is the market telling us, and what could producers do right now? It's almost like you kind of just have to sit back and wait and see what happens, so to speak.
I think so. I think you do nothing, because if the national yield is just, let's pick the middle of the range you and I are talking about, a 178, 177. Okay, that's an ending stock of like 1.5. Well, we're way underpriced for that then. So if that's what we think, I guess my advice to farmers would be don't hedge and don't sell here. Now, if you've got old crop, and a lot of people still do in the Dakotas, we just always hold on to it too long. You're at the point now where you just got to get the best basis you can, and then you can buy it back on the board. So no, I think for new crop, I'm doing nothing. I'd love to have half of the new crop sold by now, some cash sales on for guys that have to go to town and fall. I'd love to have that, but this price level and the S&D table you and I are looking at, I think you got to hang on. You might have to go into fall with nothing sold. Now, there's the other end of it. Very respectful people like Ag Resources out there with 2.2 to 2.4 billion for an ending stock, but it all depended on the yield. So I don't know. It'll be debated for another 6 months, I suppose.
Yeah, something like that. At least another 6 months through the end of the year, at least. Soybeans too. We got a long way to go on this soybean crop, and the price action there hasn't been too great either, Dwayne.
No, I think we kind of flipped there a little bit. A few weeks ago, I thought we had a trade deal with China. And then I thought Trump was going to announce this big, beautiful trade details with China the July 3rd, the Thursday night before the holiday weekend. And boy, the soybean market was disappointed when he didn't say anything about that. Now it feels like we're back at a trade war with China. And I'm like, when did this all happen? So that, of course, is putting pressure on the market. And then the weather. Like I said, you're getting a little bit closer to closing the weather market season for the corn crop. But for soybeans, that thing is wide open yet. The month of August is obviously the more important weather month. But that being said, right now there's nothing in the forecast really threatening us at all. Like he said, heavy rains. It seems like the second we get a dry area, it gets rains, but like I said, Eastern Corn Belt is a little dry. Soybeans are getting out of their funky, ugly stage up here, so crop conditions maybe improve a little bit, but we got a lot of time for the soybean market to either rally or maybe pull back to contract lows before we can make a big low.
We're having a conversation today with Dwayne Bussey from Bolt Marketing here on Market Talk as we recap Monday's trade action and more. How about the wheat complex here, Dwayne? I know it's kind of been the same bearish type of story across wheat trade. Spring wheat condition, for the most part, I haven't heard anything too terrible across the northern plains. Maybe the PNW with some dry weather, but I mean, you look at this wheat complex, we're going through the winter wheat harvest weight on the market as well. What are you tracking on the wheat side of things?
A lot of everything you just said there. I mean, for as far as the winter wheat harvest, you get over that 50% complete. That seems that harvest pressure should start to go away. Now, spring wheat has seen some pressure Friday and today from a bit of a bearish report there from USDA. Had a little bit more sizable production, a little bit more acres than we thought there. But the conditions are odd. In the Dakotas here, I think the conditions, the spring wheat looks a lot better than what the ratings are. But Montana, big struggle, 2% good to excellent in Montana? That's horrible. And of course, that carries right into, if you travel north into Canada where their spring wheat is. So I think there's some issues out there. I don't think it's a disaster, though, is the problem. Like you said, we've had plenty of moisture. Cooler temps should allow it to fill really well. I think we've made the lows in wheat. I don't think we have to go down and just crash this market, but we don't really have a bullish story out there globally either. We got some drought in Europe. Russia's prices are rallying a little bit now because their supply isn't getting to the export terminals, but we don't have that story or that buyer from us, or the Russia-Ukraine war. Nobody just cares about as far as market-wise. Bombs are still going off all the time, but nothing to rally at $1. But I sure don't want to sell wheat down here either.
Well, and to your point there, nothing really globally. You mentioned the word tariffs earlier, and there's so much on again, off again, back and forth with tariffs on this country, this date, that date. It almost feels like, Dwayne, the markets have stopped trading tariff news until it's concrete and in effect, is kind of what I'm gathering from all of this.
I am too, and I don't blame the market at all. And we'll look at the stock market today. We're actually now trading a bit higher after a weekend of announcing, large tariffs on Europe, Mexico, Russia. We might go 100%. I heard that this morning. I think the trade is exactly what you said. I think the trade is like, we'll believe it when we see it. Because, how many times have we pushed the tariff deadline back? And now, of course, August 1st is a big day now. And I'm kind of with everyone else. Like, I kind of don't think it'll happen. But whatever. I just want it behind us. I want trade deals done. They don't have to agree to buy a ton of our ag products. I just want supply and demand to just allow it to be worked. I'd rather not have tariffs percentages, but I understand that's part of global trade. But just one other thing I told you, like, how do you do this job? We have to talk tariffs all the time. It's kind of tough.
It is tough. It is tough. Well, there's been plenty of volatility in the cattle market here lately, and I want to segue over there. Rough day Monday. I mean, you had feeder cattle futures down almost $6, live cattle down over almost $3 lower. There's been all this added volatility, and some folks have told me that once you start seeing a lot of volatility, that could be an indicator of a top. I don't want to call it top. I'm sure you don't either, because it's bitten both of us before, but not a great start to the week in the cattle complex on Monday.
God, I really was hoping you were going to call it top, because I'm like, I've done it 4 times already. You might as well do it in here once and whatever. I mean, that's what people want us. They want our opinion, and I have no problem throwing it out there, obviously. But to your point, yes. Last week we had some days with huge volume, and the market only moved like 50 cents. To me, that's a sign of an exchange of ownership. And what I mean by that is maybe you had funds that were long the market exiting because obviously the price is high and they got big profits. And sadly, what you might have had Wednesday, Thursday is you might have had some hedgers out there say, enough is enough. I'm tired of margin calls. Get me out. So they would be the buyers of the market. I'm afraid you had some of that happening last week, which is also a sign of a top. Believe me, I've done this long enough to know that when farmers say it's never going down again, it's like, oh my God, it's time to hit it. Or if my FedEx guy walks in and asks me about bullish cattle market, it's time to sell. So yeah, there are some signs of that. Today, those numbers you read off sounds like just a massive day, and I have to have some sort of news for you, right? Not really. Feeder cattle were up $16 last week, so be down $6. It could just be profit taking. We were down $4 this morning. I put on social media that we were still within Friday's trading range. I mean, that's just how wide these trading ranges are, and it's pretty brutal to trade it. But unless you're on the right side, I guess. So I don't know. I don't like that box beef prices fell hard at the end of last week. Cash cattle traded sharply higher, but how long will packers let that go with lower box beef? So I'm not going to say it again for the fourth or fifth or whatever time, but it does look a lot like a top. Here's the thing is it doesn't matter if I'm right about whether it's a top or not, Jesse. Producers just need to be hedged and they need to stay in hedges. I understand margin calls suck, but not being a part of this market going down would suck even worse.
Very true. Well, you mentioned the cash trade last week. Northern dressed $10 higher, Southern deals 4 to 6 higher, but box beef coming under a little bit of pressure. One has to wonder when do the Packers, when does this cash market finally lose its steam? We know that cash has been the big driver here for quite some time, but eventually you have to think that's going to run out of steam as well here in this whole cattle market conversation.
That's actually been the most surprising thing to me throughout this whole thing. The percentage increase in, say, cash live cattle, the futures market. Yes, box beef has gone up a lot, but where prices haven't just unbelievably doubled is in the supermarkets. And it kind of blows my mind a little bit. I mean, packers are going to make money. They're very good. They're very strong, very powerful. And for them to be losing money for this long just surprises the heck out of me. Or were we off on their margins years ago? So I don't know, this whole rally, I kept thinking eventually Packers are going to win and they'll either slow down the chain speed or just close for a day or two. And that'll just crash this whole thing. But demand has been so great and so strong. And I think a lot of that is our economics changing a little bit. You can't really stop by any convenience store without there being a hamburger stand in there, and I think that's our new fast food. And I mentioned at the beginning of this segment that we're traveling, our family is for baseball games here and there. I know every family seems to be traveling on the road for kids events now. And so that's just a supper. And I don't mind grabbing one of those burgers. They're pretty good. So maybe that demand just stays there. I don't even look at the price. And then, as far as steaks in restaurants, the people who can afford it don't care about the price either. So maybe this demand just stays strong, and we know supply is going to stay low, but boy, I'm a little worried and still curious about this Mexican border thing. I think they want to open it up. I think they really do. It's about like the egg thing. We're all for U.S. farmers, but when prices get high, we need to do whatever we can to bring it back down to help the economy. So I think that border is going to get opened up again. I have no confirmation of that. And then just screwworm in general, Jesse. Man, I don't like that thing at all. I know there's a few brokers that think it's a bullish thing, but I read an article from Drovers last week that they interviewed 3 different vets from Panama, and the description of that disease and what it's like, not a disease, but a worm that's underneath the skin of cattle, it sounds horribly disgusting. They said they can smell it before you see it. And I'm like, that's just not good. If we get a screwworm in the US, I'm worried Wall Street Journal, somebody like that, will pick up that article and throw with it. And the flesh-eating larvae on cattle just wouldn't be good for the market. So I'm rambling here, Jesse, but hedgers be hedged. I could have stopped at that 5 minutes ago. I apologize.
I'll just say to your point, hopefully, we do not get the screwworm in the United States. But if we should, I hope that the story is told correctly and that veterinarians and producers and more can try to mitigate the spread as best as possible. But again, we hope we don't end up with it here in the United States. I would say as well, on the topic of livestock, on the hog market Monday, it just felt like the pressure from cattle spilled over to hogs. I didn't see anything else, Dwayne.
No, I didn't. Cash and cutouts have trended lower recently. I understand that. But no, this feels more like this was the market that traded the tariff news more than anything. And yeah, spillover from cattle. Just pressure, people worried about demand. And, tariffs, we do export a lot more pork than we do beef. So obviously tariffs would affect that. And to your point, yeah, I don't want screwworm in the U.S. by any means. And hopefully, if it does happen, hopefully it's just well educated, I guess, that, it won't be in the food chain, but, we just have to remember, to my point, that the funds are very extremely long this market. And if they want out because of a negative news headline, it'll be ugly.
Very true. Very true. Dwayne, any final thoughts? Anything else you would reiterate to folks here on the show today?
No, unless they want to call and talk my U14 baseball lineup for tonight. That's all I got to figure out yet before I take off.
Well, if they want to call and talk about that, but also maybe have a conversation about the markets, I know they could reach you very easily with a phone call or online. How can folks get in touch, Dwayne?
Yeah, of course. They know I love to talk markets. So they can call us directly here, 605-448-2365, or they can check us out online at boltmarketingllc.com.
Always a pleasure. Dwayne Bussey, Bolt Marketing. Thanks for joining us here on Market Talk today, Dwayne. We'll talk to you
thanks
soon.
for having me, Jesse.
Make sure to subscribe to the Market Talk YouTube channel. You can watch our latest interviews with top market analysts in the country, find bonus content, and much more. It's easy. Just go to youtube.com/@MarketTalkAg and hit the subscribe button. Or you can search for Market Talk Ag on YouTube.